They showed up at 8 a.m. with a chainsaw like our fence was trash on the curb. I was half asleep, hair a mess, hadn't even brewed coffee yet. Out the window I saw wood chips flying and three men in matching polos planted in front of our property like they owned the place. One barking orders with a clipboard, one revving the saw like it was his pride and joy, and a kid fresh out of college with a GoPro strapped to his chest. No paperwork, no notice, no warning, just swagger. Right then I knew this wasn't some HOA mix-up. It was staged, either for a show or to test how far they could push us. I'm Daniel, a high school history teacher. I live here with my grandpa Frank on the land our family's kept since the 70s. The wooden gate they were cutting down, Frank built it himself back in '83. That thing had stood through hurricanes and decades of storms, but apparently not through a Tuesday morning power play. I ran outside still wearing yesterday's shirt, clutching a red pen like it was some pathetic weapon, and shouted over the saw, "Stop. What are you doing? Where's your license? Your bond? Anything?" Clipboard guy didn't even flinch. Just smirked and said, "We don't need licenses for community enforcement." That word enforcement set every alarm off in my head. Real security has badges, insurance, paperwork. These jokers had polos and arrogance. I checked the mailbox, empty. No letters, no warnings, nothing. "Show me the violation paperwork," I yelled, voice raw. Clipboard guy laughed. "Safety violation," he said, pointing at our perfectly solid fence, as if 40 years of craftsmanship had magically turned unsafe because he declared it. The saw chewed through the support beam, and when the gate fell, it felt like a piece of our family history crashed with it. My chest burned with more than anger. It was grief. That's when the screen door creaked. Out stepped my grandpa Frank, 82, Vietnam vet, sharp as ever, coffee mug in hand. He didn't yell, didn't curse. Just set his cup down, walked to the shed, and after a bit of scraping came back with a belt-fed M60 he'd held onto since the war. He placed it on the porch table, clipped in the ammo belt, sat in his chair, and took another sip. "Just having breakfast on my land," he said, calm as stone. The air shifted instantly. The saw went quiet. The smirk slid off clipboard guy's face. Even the GoPro kid froze. Across the street, Mrs. Delgado had her phone up, whispering to neighbors. Suddenly, their intimidation stunt wasn't theirs anymore. It had become a neighborhood spectacle. Clipboard guy tried to salvage it, muttering, "We'll be back with proper authorities." Frank didn't even blink. "Looking forward to meeting some real authorities," he said, steady as bedrock. They packed up faster than I'd ever seen grown men move. Chainsaw tossed into the truck bed, tires screeching as they tore down the street. But the way they kept glancing over their shoulders told me this wasn't finished. And I was right. Within hours, the footage spread like wildfire. Mrs. Delgado's phone video had already fused with the kid's GoPro stream, and suddenly my 82-year-old grandfather was everywhere online. Half the internet labeled him a dangerous relic. The other half called him a legend. One comment stuck with me, "Crazy old man with a machine gun." My hands shook reading it. This wasn't some caricature. This was the man who fought a war, who built every inch of this property, who kept our family rooted. And yet strangers hiding behind screens dared to insult him while defending men with no authority and a chainsaw. By evening, news vans clogged the street. Neighbors grumbled about the circus. I just sat there wondering how something so obviously wrong could still split people into opposing camps. Frank, unshaken as always, muttered, "They're running scared. Be patient." But my patience was wearing thin. So I started digging. I combed through state HOA statutes, city ordinances, county codes. The pattern was undeniable. Legitimate associations must give 30 days written notice, provide appeals, and use the courts before touching property. None of that had happened. Our record was spotless. These weren't HOA enforcers. They were frauds. Then came the text, anonymous, no name, just 6 words that made my stomach knot. Check Silver, Mesa permits. Follow the money. So I sat outside City Hall, scrolling public records. And there it was. Silver Mesa Development had filed for a massive expansion project called Sunkrest Ridge. The plans showed the road widening right past our land. On the maps, one bottleneck stood out, circled in red ink. Our gate. Suddenly it all made sense. This wasn't about a fence. It was corporate theft, pure and simple, an attempt to bulldoze their way through instead of paying fair value or battling it out legally. 2 days later, Mara, the HOA president everyone despised for nitpicking lawn ornaments, showed up looking nothing like her usual self. She wore a tailored suit, flanked by 2 men in black suits. She pounded on our door, demanding we surrender an unregistered weapon. My blood boiled, but I kept calm. Ma'am, that's a legally documented relic. Never left this land. Frank stepped up beside me, VA paperwork in hand. More relic. Registered. Staying here, he said, steady as granite. I asked her for a warrant, for badges, for any proof of authority. Nothing. Just shuffling feet and stone faces. I laughed, because sometimes the absurdity is so sharp it's almost funny. You don't have any authority at all, do you? Their silence said it all. They left in defeat, but Mara's glare on the way out made it clear this wasn't over. That night, Frank and I sat at the kitchen table. He ran a cleaning rod through the M60's barrel while I spread zoning maps and permit records across the wood. Without looking up, he said, "These aren't overzealous neighbors." And I believed him. They weren't officials, they were thieves in uniforms. So we built a plan, document every repair, gather testimonies, set up cameras feeding to the cloud. Within a week, dozens of neighbors joined us, each with their own story. Every single case traced the same line. Properties targeted along the development's expansion route. This wasn't sloppy management. It was organized fraud. The showdown came quick. Saturday morning, Mara pulled up with clipboards, rulers, and outfits polished just enough to fool the careless eye. I hit live stream before they set foot on our driveway. 3,000 people tuned in within minutes. Frank sat calmly on the porch, coffee in hand, papers beside the M60. No threats, just presence. Mara barked, "Surrender that weapon per Community Code 127. The chat exploded with laughter. There's no such code. Then came the slip. One of her men dropped a folder, papers spilling across our porch. The camera caught it all. Clear logo, Silver Mesa Development. The live stream chat detonated. Screenshots spread across the internet before they could gather the evidence. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, voices rising. Mrs. Delgado shouted, "These people don't represent us." Mara's illusion of authority collapsed in seconds. Frank leaned forward, voice steady as iron. "Taking property here without a warrant is armed robbery under state law." With thousands of witnesses watching live, they had nowhere to go. They backed off, humiliated. For the first time, the neighborhood stood shoulder to shoulder with us. But humiliation breeds desperation. That Friday night at 2 a.m., our floodlights lit up the yard like a stadium. I jolted awake, grabbed my phone, hit live stream. 3 masked figures crept forward, carrying lock cutters and battery saws. "Surprise! You're on camera," I shouted. They froze in the glare, caught red-handed. Frank stepped out, flag in one hand, the M60 resting behind him. His voice carried like command fire. "Gentlemen, you're committing felonies on private land at 2 in the morning." Viewers poured in 5,000, then 15,000, then 30,000. Every face, every license plate, every tool captured and streamed beyond their reach. And then the twist, the kid with the GoPro cult was there again. He stepped forward, shaking, and whispered, "I didn't know." Frank didn't berate him. He just nodded. "Then learn, son. Choose better employers next time." That moment alone went viral. An old soldier showing mercy to a young man caught in the wrong fight. Weeks later, the DA announced federal RICO charges against Silver Mesa and everyone tied to the scheme. Mara pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy, ordered to pay restitution. The fake enforcers faced charges of trespass, property destruction, and impersonation. Silver Mesa's executives are still clawing in court, but their empire is collapsing under evidence, footage, and testimony. What started as a shattered gate turned into a blueprint for exposing corruption. We rebuilt that gate, this time with neighbors by our side, stronger than before. Above it hangs a carved sign, "Private land protected." Fake authority exposed. Constitution defended. Our online group grew into a network spanning states, families sharing tools, knowledge, and support against the same tactics. Cole found real work with a licensed security firm, redemption woven into his new path. Frank sits on the porch most evenings now, flag waving behind him, the M60 displayed, not as a threat, but as a reminder. Freedom is preserved through vigilance, not violence. And me? I learned the hardest truth. False authority only wins when good people stay quiet, when we dismiss paperwork, when we let intimidation slide. But when you shine a light, when you document, when you stand together, frauds collapse faster than a rotted fence post. So I'll leave you with this. If men in polos with chainsaws came for your home, would you step outside and hold a line? Or would you hope someone else fought for you? Was Frank wrong to set that relic on the porch? Or was it the symbol that turned the tide? Drop your thoughts. Share your stance. And if you believe stories like this matter, spread it, because battles like these never really sleep.